Welcome to the Return to Her podcast. I'm Cassie Dalton, experienced yoga teacher, energy worker, and wellness coach who is passionate about helping women reconnect with their true selves and thrive in all areas of life. Even though I'm still doing the work on my own wellness and spiritual path, my mission now is to guide you in reigniting your inner spark and living in alignment with the unique calling of your soul by honoring your whole being. Together, let's create a pathway to empowerment, balance, and authentic living. Your journey starts here, and I'm excited to support you every step of the way. Welcome back to the Return to Her podcast. Today, we're diving into a powerful concept that can completely change how you move through life. Have you ever felt like your thoughts and emotions are running the show? Like you're just along for the ride? If so, you're not alone. But here's the truth. You are meant to be in the driver's seat of your own life. In this episode, we're talking about how to shift from being a passenger to reclaiming the wheel. When we consciously reclaim the driver's seat, we can shift our thoughts, reprogram our beliefs, and move toward the life that we truly want. Just a quick reminder before we dive in, this episode is for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you're experiencing mental health challenges, please reach out to a licensed professional for support. All right, let's start with the idea of the monkey mind and the ego. You've probably heard people referring to the monkey mind, that part of your brain that is constantly chattering, jumping from thought to thought like a monkey swinging from branch to branch. And like an untrained monkey, it can create chaos if it's left to its own devices. I've seen this firsthand in my own life. When anxiety creeps in, like it did for me as a child, or even today when I'm not being vigilant in my self-care practices, the monkey mind takes over, throwing thoughts around wildly, reinforcing fear and stress, sending cortisol and adrenaline through the body. You know what I'm talking about. So here's why this matters. Without awareness, the monkey mind acts like a monkey and misbehaves. It creates patterns of thought that keep us stuck. But with attention and discipline, the monkey mind can be trained. It's like a mischievous little animal. It needs boundaries and guidance, not punishment. Through awareness and these boundaries, we can start to reprogram how the mind operates, aligning it with our higher purpose. Now, let's talk about the ego. If the monkey mind is the chatter, the ego is the I behind the chatter. Your sense of self, shaped by your beliefs and past experiences. Like I talked about last week, the ego's job is to keep you safe by labeling and categorizing the world around you. This isn't inherently bad, it's essential for navigating life. But the ego also reinforces a sense of separation. Separation from your higher self, from your divine nature, from source, and from the world around you. Here's where they connect. The ego feeds the mind its programming, and the mind amplifies that. For example, if the ego says, you're not enough, or you're not worthy, or no one likes you, you don't make enough money, whatever the limiting belief is, the monkey mind starts to swing from branch to branch, repeating that story over and over, and looking for evidence to prove that it's true. And whatever the mind wants to find evidence for, it will. That story, that belief, becomes your reality, the way that you experience your life. And the choices you make stem directly from that perception of reality. This dynamic is what keeps you stuck in patterns of fear, lack, and limitation. But when you become aware of this, you can break the cycle. And we'll talk about how in a little while, so stay with me here because I need to walk backwards for a moment. I like to think of it this way. So I imagine that the body is the vehicle, the mind is like the operating system, and the ego and the higher self are passengers in this vehicle, this car that we call you. You're, of course, also there, your awareness, your consciousness. Your ego is like a hypervigilant passenger who is gathering information, warns you of obstacles, and suggests routes based on past experiences and beliefs. Its whole purpose in this vehicle is to keep you on the road, to tell you what the speed limit is and when to slow down, to tell you when curves are coming up or when to freak out because someone is getting too close in the lane beside you. I'm imagining myself driving with my husband right now. The ego becomes a backseat driver, but it shouldn't be the one deciding where you go. When we let the ego take the wheel, we end up making choices rooted in fear, limiting beliefs, and outdated stories. Because the ego relies on programming that's rooted in fear and separation, and it doesn't even know where you're going, it just wants to keep you on the same road forever because it's terrified to turn left onto some side road that it's never seen before. Over time, our ego starts to get so loud and it starts to stomp the air brakes so hard that we learn to give in to it when it gets scared and we give it control of the wheel. The more control you've given it over your life, the more likely it is that you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or out of alignment in your life. But with awareness, you can more and more start to remind the ego that it's not actually the driver. And then you start to remember that there's another passenger in this car, your higher self. The higher self doesn't jump around and grab the wheel. It doesn't stomp the air brakes or scream. It's a very calm passenger. She's more quiet and she trusts so completely in her connection with the divine because she is an extension of the divine. And the crazy thing is, she already knows where it is you want to go, not because she's been there, but because that's where she came from. She already knows the roads you need to travel because those roads lead exactly to your highest potential. Whereas the ego can only see the stretch of highway directly in front of it because it's limited to the sensory experience, that experience that is skewed by your beliefs that have formed from past experiences. The higher self is just that, higher. It's like she's up above us, looking down on the car, on the road, and scanning in all directions. She's got a bird's eye view of the whole situation. And when you think about it this way, between these two passengers, who would you trust more to get you where you're going? If you're still trusting the ego more than you're trusting the higher self, welcome to humanity. That's part and parcel of the whole gig. But as we start to wake up more and more to the memory that we are actually divine, that our bodies, minds, ego, and higher self are all extensions of the divine moving through this world as us, we start to remember the higher self is always with us. We might feel her shifting in the seat and quietly whispering, "Let's go this way." And we start to trust her more. That's where the journey gets really good. Here's what I have noticed comes up for people, including myself. When we start to recognize the ways that the ego has been shaping our thoughts and our behaviors and keeping us in a sense of separation from our connection to higher self, our connection to source, there is this impulse to resist it, to try and fight it or silence it or even eradicate it altogether. And here's the truth as I see it or as I feel it. You don't need to silence the monkey mind or destroy the ego. Actually, you can't do those things because they're integral parts of your human experience. The ego, it isn't something that we're supposed to get rid of, it's part of you. It only becomes a problem when it is left unchecked, when it starts driving instead of helping you navigate. And what would you do if someone saw you standing there doing your job and then they started running after you, screaming, fist flying, trying to attack you? You might fight back. You might run and hide. And if this happens over and over again, you're probably going to get really good at hiding and very sneaky because you still have a job to do. You don't want to get fired, but you're going to make sure that you do your job where that person can't see you anymore. That's exactly what the ego does when it perceives that you're coming after it to harm it, to kill it. It is literally the part of you that is programmed to do whatever is necessary to keep you alive. So it's necessary to keep itself alive, and it roots down even stronger. For example, at the start of my spiritual journey, I believed that I was rising above my ego, and I got so proud of myself for understanding what the ego was and how it was working in my life. And I felt so enlightened, so aware. But instead of disappearing, my ego became really quiet and really subtle. She showed up in a different form. She made me feel pretty darn self-righteous, as if I were more right or more advanced than others on their spiritual path, as if I knew more than they did about how they should live their lives based on how I was understanding how to live my life, justifying judgment toward those that I thought were less spiritual than me based on their outward behaviors. Also, that perfectionism that I talked about in my second episode that led me to anxiety and panic disorder, an extension of ego, remember, caused me to need to do my spirituality perfectly. Like if I didn't meditate exactly how my teachers suggested, I was doing it wrong. I felt like I wasn't good enough, that I was failing at it. And feeling this failure, this not good enough, this self-doubt, it kept me safely in my zone of familiarity. Again, the ego is doing its job here by keeping me in familiar waters, swimming alongside my little monkey mind friend. And I didn't recognize how it was playing on me in my quest to deepen my spiritual journey. Coming back to the point, the ego, although it's not sounding so great right now, it's not something to destroy. It is a part of us. It's the voice that is developed over time to keep us safe, to help us navigate the world based on the experiences that we've had and the beliefs that we formed as a result. The problem isn't the ego itself. It's that we let it run the show without questioning it. So instead of trying to silence or destroy the ego, the real work is about bringing awareness to it. When we recognize the patterns that it is playing out, we have the power to shift them. We can gently take the reins back, or I guess in this analogy, take the wheel back, and decide which beliefs are actually serving us and which ones we're ready to let go of. This is where the real transformation happens, not by rejecting parts of ourselves or destroying them. It's by integrating them, by choosing to show up differently over and over until those new beliefs become the foundation of who we are, all aspects of ourself united. If you would like to start to develop more in this direction, here are some things that you can start doing today to take the wheel back and steer your life in the direction that your higher self is calling you to go. Number 1, become the observer, the non-judgmental observer, or the non-attached witness. Some of you that take meditation or yoga classes with me have heard me use that language before. The idea here is that your mind is constantly producing thoughts, but remember, you are not your monkey mind. You are the one witnessing the mind. And that allows you to access your higher self, that part of you that is open, expansive, and aligned with love, trust, and possibility. When a thought arises, pause and ask yourself, is this coming from my ego or from my higher self? Many of the thoughts come from the ego, which is fear-driven and rooted in lower vibrational emotions like doubt, shame, and scarcity. So ask yourself, is this thought based in fear or in love? The more you practice observing your thoughts without any judgment, without any attachment, without any need to necessarily fix them, simply observing them, the more you start to shift away from ego-driven patterns and step into the clarity of your higher self. Number 2, reframe your limiting beliefs. Many of the thoughts that are running through your mind are simply beliefs that you've created over time, but that doesn't mean they're true. Don't believe everything you think. The ego thrives on limitation, convincing you that you're not enough, that you'll fail, or that you must play small in order to stay safe. But your higher self knows the truth. You are worthy, you are capable, you are always evolving. So, for example, if you ever catch yourself thinking, I'm not good enough to do this, I always mess things up, people don't like me, whatever the belief is for you, pause and question it. Where did this belief come from? Challenge it. Flip the script to something that is expansive and empowering. Like, I'm growing every day. I trust myself to handle whatever comes my way. I am enough. The beliefs that you choose to hold shape your reality. So choose those that align with your higher self and help you step into your highest potential. Number 3, shift from reacting to responding. The ego reacts impulsively. It takes things personally, gets defensive, and operates from old wounds. Oh my gosh, I'm thinking of an argument I had with my husband recently. I was definitely acting from my ego self and not my higher self in that moment. That might be another story for another time. To get back to what I was saying, the ego is defensive and operates from old stories, old patterns, old wounds, whereas the higher self, it responds with wisdom and intention, with love and grace. The next time something triggers you, whether it is a difficult conversation, a frustrating situation, maybe a little argument with your spouse, or a self-critical thought, pause, take a deep breath. Instead of reacting from an old pattern, ask yourself, how would my higher self handle this moment? This simple pause between stimulus and reaction can give you your control back, allowing you to engage with life from a place of inner strength rather than that fear-based conditioning of the ego. Number 4, use the power of visualization. Your subconscious mind responds powerfully to imagery. So take a moment, close your eyes, and picture yourself firmly in the driver's seat of your life. Imagine yourself holding the wheel, feeling steady, confident, and in control. Notice that when you're in alignment with your higher self, your decisions feel very expansive and empowered, rooted in trust. Contrast that with when the ego is in control. Those decisions feel restrictive, fearful, uncertain. The more you practice seeing yourself as the conscious creator of your life, the more naturally you'll start to step into that reality. Number 5, practice daily alignment. The key to long-term transformation isn't a one-time decision. It is daily practice. The ego loves distractions, chaos, and keeping you too busy to check in with yourself. Your higher self, on the other hand, speaks in stillness, clarity, and intuition. So whether it's through meditation, journaling, mindful movement, or simply setting an intention each morning, do something that will help you create space every day to reconnect with your higher self and your highest truth. Ask yourself, what does my higher self need today? Where would she like to take me? The more you tune in to her, the easier it becomes to steer your life in the direction that feels aligned, fulfilling, and free. The more you do this work, the more automatic it becomes. You are literally rewiring your brain, forming new neural pathways that support the beliefs and the actions of the person you are becoming. And over time, these practices won't feel like effort. They'll feel like your new way of being. And that's when you know that you are truly in the driver's seat of your own life. The big picture. The key point I hope that's coming through this: the ego isn't inherently bad. It's just trying to help, though it can often be misguided in its efforts. Instead of viewing the ego and the monkey mind as things to battle or destroy, what if we shift our perspective to see them as tools that allow your soul to make meaning of and engage with the world? The goal isn't to fight them, but to befriend them. When you align your mind and ego with your higher self, they stop working against you and start working for you. This process becomes about integration, not annihilation. It's about creating harmony within your whole being. To acknowledge and befriend the ego without getting swept away by its stories. Recognize its fears and how they show up in your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. But don't let that part of yourself take the wheel. Instead, acknowledge the ego, let it feel seen with compassionate awareness, and then turn to that other passenger, that part of you that is calm, grounded, confident, the one who doesn't speak with words, but radiates trust, love, faith, and openness. Let that part of you guide the way. I hope that this episode helped you start to see the difference between how the ego is showing up in your life and how you can tune more toward the higher self and let that guide your journey instead. Until next week, remember, you are already whole. You already have everything you need within you. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time when we return to her. If this episode resonated with you and you're feeling called to go deeper, I have something for you. I've put together a free guide. I'm calling it 10 Beliefs to Reprogram Your Mind, Align with Your Higher Self, and Create Lasting Change. This is a great starting point if you're ready to shift the way you think and create real transformation in your life. You can grab your copy at wholebeingjourney.com/belief, and I'll put that link in the show notes. If you wanted personalized support, whether through coaching or Reiki, or you might be interested in my Yoga Plus membership, I would love to guide you on your journey. You can book a free clarity call with me to see what might be the best fit. If you would like to do that, head over to wholebeingjourney.com/call to get started. Thank you so much for being here, for doing this work, and for choosing to come home to yourself over and over again. I'll see you next time as we return to her. Namaste.